Recently, the Minister of Housing and Urban Affairs highlighted the slow pace of implementation of the provisions of the Street Vendors, Protection of Livelihood and Regulation of Street Vending, Act 2014. Join me as I dive into the 2014 Act and see if street vendors really get the protection they've been promised. The 2014 Act is a landmark legislation that aims to protect the rights of street vendors, often considered the backbone of urban economies. It's a significant step towards recognizing the importance of street vendors in urban development and social justice. The struggles of street vendors are deeply entrenched in the social and economic fabric of our cities. From lack of access to basic amenities like sanitation and water to the constant fear of being chased away by authorities, their lives are marked by uncertainty and insecurity. Despite their significant contribution to the economy, they're often denied the basic rights and dignity they deserve. The history of street vendors is filled with stories of resilience and struggle, of people fighting to make a living against all odds. But it's also a story of neglect and exploitation, of a system that has failed to provide for their needs and protect their rights. The 2014 Act is a bold attempt to change this narrative to provide legal protection, regulation, and support to street vendors. At its core, the Act recognizes the importance of street vendors in urban economies and seeks to create an enabling environment for them to thrive. It provides for the establishment of vending zones, ensures access to social services, and sets up a grievance redressal mechanism to address their concerns. Key features of the Street Vendors Act 2014. One of the most significant provisions of the Act is the creation of a Street Vendors Certificate, which provides a sense of legitimacy and recognition to their occupation. This certificate not only protects them from harassment but also enables them to access loans, insurance, and other benefits that were previously denied to them. Survey of street vendors every 5 years for issuing a certificate of vending, COV. The Act also sets up a town vending committee comprising of representatives from the local authority, street vendors, and other stakeholders. This committee will be responsible for managing vending zones, resolving disputes, and ensuring that the provisions of the Act are implemented in letter and spirit. TVCs are to be heterogeneously constituted, with at least 40% of its elected members being street vendors, of which 1/3 are to be women. There is a ceiling limit on the number of vendors established at 2.5% of the population within the respective ward, zone, town or city to ensure proper accommodation in the designated vending areas. Grievance redressal committees will be established by states, chaired by a retired judicial officer, to ensure impartiality in addressing the grievances of street vendors. Today we are going to discuss this critical question. Is the government truly protecting street vendors, or are they just catering to the whims of the wealthy elite? The story of Rukmini, a street vendor from Delhi, is a powerful testament to the struggles faced by these entrepreneurs. Rukmini began selling fruit on the street corner when she was just 15 years old. Over the years, she built a loyal customer base, and her business thrived. But when the local government announced plans to beautify the area, Rukmini found herself facing eviction. Despite having all the necessary permits, she was forced to shut down her business. The government's excuse was that her stand was an eyesore, that it detracted from the aesthetic appeal of the area. But the real reason was that a big business had offered to buy out the entire block, and the government was eager to collect the revenue. Rukmini fought back, organizing protests and petitions, but in the end, she was forced to close up shop. It was a devastating blow not just to her business, but to her dignity and sense of self-worth. The implications of government actions like these are far-reaching. They perpetuate inequality, stifling innovation and entrepreneurship among the most vulnerable populations. They create a culture of dependency where big business is seen as the only viable option, and they undermine the very fabric of our societies, pitting the haves against the have-nots. The role of government is complex and multifaceted. On the one hand, governments have the power to create policies that support and uplift street vendors. They can provide resources, training, and access to capital. They can create designated vending zones, provide permits, and offer protection from harassment. But all too often, governments prioritize the interests of big business over those of street vendors. They create policies that favor the wealthy, that stifle competition, and that maintain the status quo. So, what's the takeaway from all of this? The government's role in supporting street vendors is critical, but all too often they prioritize the interests of the wealthy elite. We need to recognize the inherent value of street vendors not just as entrepreneurs, but as community builders, as innovators, and as drivers of economic growth. What do you think? Do you have a story to share about a street vendor who's made a difference in your life? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.